Welcome to another provider preview. I'm Julie Hatfield, still president of Beyond the Game Alliance. We are a nonprofit organization that holistically and proactively educates and supports athletes in preparing for their game, in the game, and beyond. I am so honored today to have Gallup certified global strength coach, entrepreneur, and activator of What's Strong with You, Coach Kevin Greene. Welcome to the room, Coach.
Thanks, Julie. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to dig in with you. Are you ready for this?
I'm super excited. Yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, I think it's so important for you to share a little bit about your own athlete journey and your own athlete story and in the industry of sports. I know you are immersed in this industry. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit with our viewers today.
Yeah, depends how far you want me to go back, but I was Gen Xer, grew up in the world where it was go outside and play until the dinner bell rings. So and whether that was pouring rain or not, we were outside. So I grew up outside of Baltimore, and it's interesting because I played soccer, baseball, basketball. I was a really bad basketball player, even at 6'6". But the first basket I ever scored was at the wrong basket. So, but it's interesting because I was a baseball player and then had an opportunity to go to a very small private school where they didn't have baseball. So the coach saw me and put a stick in my hand and kind of fell in love with the sport. Again, being from Baltimore, it's kind of odd that I didn't grow up with a stick in my hand, but I always loved soccer. Basketball was kind of that intermediary sport, and um, you know, it's kind of strange. I have a 24-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter, and they were both very athletic. And my son chose to play lacrosse in college. My daughter did not, but I always say that as part of my journey, I looked at him, and he played with joy on the field. Right? He was every time there was music, he was dancing around and just. And I was kind of an angry player. And when I look back on how I played, it bothers me. It bothers me now about how I grew up playing. Um, and I don't think it wasn't really a reflection on my coaches because my coaches were incredible. They were tough, but fair. And I had the opportunity to play lacrosse at a small Division III school in Pennsylvania, which was, again, an eye opener. When you think you're pretty good in high school and then you go to college and you get a wake up call that everybody else is really good there too. You have to make up your mind. Are you going to dig in or are you going to just give up? Um, and it was a challenge, not seeing the field for, a year or so. Um, and then I actually got hurt my junior year, I'm a huge mental health advocate. And part of the reason is the experience that I went through my junior year in college of kind of going into a depression of not really knowing if I wanted to play anymore. Um, you know, Trying to decide if it was who I was, what I wanted to do. Was it about the uniform? Was it about being cool, or was it about the team? And it was kind of a turning point. And then I decided not to play my senior year. It bothers me a little bit still. But again, everything's a learning opportunity. And and that kind of propelled me into, once I got out of school, to pick up again and play in some adult leagues and some old guy leagues and tournaments and things like that. And so, that was kind of my pathway of playing. I don't know if there's anything specific in there you would want me to focus on, but
I'd
kind of
love
how I
to,
got to where I am.
yeah, well, I'd love to connect, that experience to where you are today and what the amazing work you're doing and the amazing work that you're going to bring to the Alliance for us, Kevin. I know you mentioned that period of your sports career where there was that turning point. What do you think from that season of your life positioned you for what you do now? And what do you do now? What are you bringing to the Alliance?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me that. So what I do, as a strength coach, I'm not a physical strength coach. I'm a mental strength coach, basically. Um, so I leverage the Clifton Strengths Assessment to help individuals and teams really understand what they are good at, right? We we have a tendency in our world, not just locally and regionally, everywhere, to focus on what's wrong with you. I think every person that I've ever worked with, I ask them, have you ever been asked what's wrong with you? Whether it's kind of sarcastic or not. But it's a position that, in our world, we focus on the weaknesses. Let's fix your weaknesses, right? So really the focus for me is helping people understand what are your talents that you bring to the table, right? Everybody is wired in a specific way. They bring natural talents, and the talents that people have, they become strengths through use, just like a muscle. So, it's one thing to understand them, but to learn how to use them, right? To learn how to leverage them for your own self-awareness, right? And then to understand that 99.99% of life, you are going to be working with someone else. So it's not good enough just to understand what you're good at, but it's to understand and appreciate what other people bring to the relationship, right? So whether it's coach to player, whether it's player to player, whether it's player to team, by having a better understanding of who each person is and what their strengths are in relation to the relationship or the bigger relationship, it gives everybody a better understanding of how do we create success, right? What does success look like to me? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And then once I understand that, if you and I are building a relationship in whatever way, shape, or form, I can ask you the same question. Julie, what does success look like for you professionally, personally? What does it feel like? How do you like to be, not awarded, but how do you like to be praised publicly, privately, things like that? And then as you get together as a team, you're not looking at somebody and going, oh my God, this person is the weak link. It's, well, okay, what do they bring? I coached a kid a couple of years ago who wasn't a great lacrosse player, but we called him, he was our air traffic controller because he was so smart and could see things on the field that we used him as like our coach on the field. And that was his role. And it was fantastic. But otherwise, if we just looked at him as a player, we might not have, we might have discounted his strength that he brought to the table and just, tossed him aside. So, so it's important that every individual, I don't care how, well, I was going to say how young you are, but you have to have a certain capability to understand this stuff. But from, age 13, 14, all the way up to 999, to be able to understand and value what you are good at, it's critical, because think about it. We make 17 and 18-year-olds decide what they want to do for the rest of their life, right? It took me 55 years to figure out not only what I wanted to do, but what I was really good at, and I'm still working on it, but I want every person that comes through the Alliance to leave or to be part of it and to understand, what, I may not be the best player on my team, or I'm going into the working world, but I know who I am and I know what I bring to the table. And I teach people to never apologize for what you're strong with. Learn how to modulate it. It's a gas pedal, right? Learn how to, sometimes you got to back off, sometimes you have to put it down, but never apologize for what you're good at.
So true, Kevin. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to have you alongside us in this, because, one thing that we walk our student athletes through in our high performance program is discovering their talents, their assets, their skill sets beyond the game, because, we believe we train to our strengths, right? Or we play to our strengths, rather. We train those gaps, those voids, those weaknesses, but we've always got to play to our strengths. But here's what I've noticed, Kevin, and I'm curious your perspective on this, and if you see this as well, that when we ask a student athlete what their strengths, talents, and assets are, generally speaking, it's, I'm really good at hitting the ball. I'm really good at throwing the ball. I'm really good at running. I'm good with this. So although we know those are great in the sport, truly our sports are a distribution channel for all of those intangible talents, skills, and strengths. So Kevin, how would you help a student athlete if they just couldn't see how good and what they bring to the table beyond the game?
Yeah, well, you're making the hair on my arm stand up, because that's the challenge, right? It's a language, right? And if anything, So I work with a group of students at University of Delaware. I was up there last night, and we have a swimmer, a softball player, and I asked them, as we wrap up our session, I'll say, I'll do things like, why should I hire you? Because what I want them to understand is how can you talk about yourself and be really um, just powerful in terms of making an impact on somebody, right? So it's giving them the confidence to say, if somebody says to you, why should I hire you, right? Well, let me tell you about the strengths I bring to the table and how they how they transition or how they'll create success for me in this particular role, right? So that's one piece of it. The other piece is really about understanding what can you do with those strengths as you transition out of your uniform, out of the pool, out of the off of the field. It's giving yourself an extra boost of confidence because you know it gives you a new identity, right? We've talked about how some people, and it was a fear that I had with my own son about losing his identity because he was so close to his teammates. When you take that uniform off, almost like when you're in the military, you build so much of your identity around it. How do you talk about yourself in a context of sport, but how that transitions into life, right? Because there's so many people who say, God, I'm going to hire an athlete because they understand teamwork and resilience and all that stuff. But to your point, now it's not just, well, I'm a great hitter. It's, I was a great hitter in college. And part of the reason I realized why I was such a great hitter is, I was able to analyze the data that the coaches would give to me, right? And maybe that was part of it, but having the ability to connect and have them understand why their strengths are what they are and what they meant to their success on the field, in the pool, on the court, and how is that going to transition into, a job, a relationship, community,
Yeah.
And it's so important to have that transition piece because right now it's same thing in high school, right? We send them off to college or into the working world and they're just gone, but we give them no support system. And this is almost it's a self-support system to feel confident about who they are and what they bring to any situation.
So good, Kevin. And I want to anchor one thing really quick before we move on is something that you said a little bit earlier about knowing, but also believing their strengths. So it's one thing to know what you're good at or what you bring to the table
Great
that
point.
is
Yeah.
transferable, but it's a whole nother story to believe it and have conviction behind it and not hide behind
Absolutely.
it because you may think it's not viable or valuable. So I think what you said is spot on and so key. And I know we talked a lot about the transfer beyond the game, but talk about how important it is in the game to know your strengths, even if it's not a skill strength, right? Those things around the periphery. How can that impact a kid in the sport if they know what they're good at beyond the game? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it's a powerful question because, you know, so part of it is, and that's why I love working with kind of early, that early blooming athlete too, right? Because the earlier they understand what truly makes them special and unique. And every single player, and this is not just blowing smoke about the chances of two people having the same strength profile are 33 million to one, right? So you could have the similar top five, top 10 strengths, but each person has a different description around what that is, right? Um, and the way it helps them as an athlete themselves is okay, if I'm struggling with something. So strengths are, and you know this better than anyone, your strengths are aligned with your mind and your body are connected, right? Physiology, it's proven science, right? The mind and body connection. And this is what angers me about myself is if I would have known how to control myself earlier in my sport career, I think I would have been much better poised to handle the stress of, it wasn't really anxiety, but it was the beginning of depression, right? And college athletes, especially if you get hurt, it's so easy to lose your identity. So having that ability to go inside you and say, all right, physiologically, I'm upset about something. Okay, let me look at my strength profile and go, why am I so upset about this situation? Right? Why am I so angry? A great example is my greatest strength, my number one strength is adaptability. And when if I would have known this, right, and if I would have been able to understand that, look, physiologically, I'm upset because I'm hurt and I can't decide what I want to do. If I would have been given the chance, so here's how it played out. So essentially, I went into my coach's office and I sat down and said, I don't know if I want to play anymore. And he just looked at me and it felt like forever. And he just went, okay, and in hindsight, which is a wonderful tool, if I would have been given some opportunities to get through that situation, right? To say, okay, you know what, I hear you. What's going on? Are there things that I can do to help you get through this situation? What do you need from me, right? And after he said okay, and I just got up and left, I had no tool to adapt to that situation. There was nobody there to support me. If I would have known a little bit more about myself, I've got some other strengths in there that work really well with the adaptability, that I would have been able to go out and solicit help from teammates, from maybe a counselor at the time. I didn't know anything about myself, so I didn't know how to self-support, right? And that is such a critical piece because we have to learn how to, it's like self-care, right? We have to learn how to take care of ourselves before we can help take care of others. So, and sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, and I've done a lot of learning in my lifetime. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so important to, Kevin, just to reflect on what you're saying, is that the best time to connect with who you are is now, right? And what's strong with you is now. No matter where you are in your sport,
Absolutely.
your game, or your career, we can only get better at understanding what we bring to the table and how that aligns with not only our current situation, but what we desire and want for ourselves in the future. I like to look at strengths, Kevin, as a filter, right? Your strengths are to be used as a gift to the world. And if you are
Absolutely.
perhaps stepping into, a situation, a team, a career that doesn't align with your strengths, it may need to be run through a filter or talked through with a coach or a mentor.
Absolutely. We spend so much of our life, Julie. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that sentence, because we spend so much of our time focusing on, again, what's wrong with us, or you need to work on this, you need to get better at this. Well, the way we, through the Gallup organization, the way we look at and redefine weaknesses, they're just things that get in the way of being able to leverage our strengths, of what we're really, really good at, right? And even those weaknesses, they're strengths, but they're low, right? They're low priority. So rather than spending so much time, and you will know when you're focusing on the wrong things, because again, physiologically, you are going to be drained mentally and physically, and you can go over and over and over and over again trying to fix those things. And the more it drains you, that's your sign to say, you know what, I'm swimming upstream and I need to stop. I need to get out of the water and I need to figure out where, maybe I need to be in a different stream, and I think that's I think it's one of the main reasons I wanted to be part of Beyond the Game Alliance, because it's about transitions, right? And transition periods, to your point, the best time is now. Well, every day of our life, we go through transitions, right? Whether they're little or whether they're big. And those transitions are the key times that people need to wake up and be hyper aware of what they're good at, right? And aware of their strengths, so that they can make that transition a little bit easier, a little bit more comfortably, and a lot more confident.
Mm. Yes. So everyone get in the room with Coach Kevin. If you're watching this, you need to get in the room with him.
Game, yeah.
Multiple opportunities to do that through the years, as Kevin has come alongside us to not only provide his skill set, but his experience and everything else you bring to the table as a coach. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Julie. Excited to be part of this.
Well, we are honored to have you as a piece of this puzzle, and especially for our athletes as a resource. So our mission is to truly support these athletes in their game and beyond. And we all know how important it is to know your strengths, to be able to utilize your strengths, and quite literally play to your strengths. So since we are a nonprofit, we invite you to join our mission to help fund all of these incredible resources for our athletes. There are 3 different ways that you can explore coming alongside us. One is if you are a coach, a leader, an athletic director, and have students that you service in years high school, varsity, and above through college, we may be an answer for you. We may be a solution for your athletes. So please reach out. And we can explore what a partnership may look like. You can also become an aligned provider, just like Coach Kevin. If you have a special skill set that you bring to the table and you want to use your strengths as well, and you speak athlete, let's start talking. And then lastly, you can become a sponsor. If you are a business owner who has a heart for these athletes and you'd like to be a part of the mission to serve them, we welcome that conversation. You can find more information about all the ways to give at beyondthegamealliance.org. And if you want to stay in the loop, be sure to hit subscribe and tune into our social media channels as well. Kevin, great seeing you again. Awesome conversation. And I look forward to seeing you in a room soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie.